Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we're going to discuss an important topic that frequently appears in conversations among followers of the Iraqi dinar and observers of Iraq's economic developments. The question that many people ask is simple, but the answer is far more complex. When exactly could the exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar change within Iraq? One of the most honest and realistic perspectives currently circulating among analysts and observers is the understanding that nobody knows the precise date or time when the exchange rate might change. Financial markets, monetary policy decisions, and national economic adjustments rarely operate on publicly announced timelines, especially when it comes to sensitive currency policy decisions. Because of this, the most responsible approach is not speculation about exact dates, but rather studying current economic indicators and historical patterns to understand what conditions typically precede a change in currency policy. To begin understanding this issue, it is helpful to first look at how exchange rate adjustments generally occur in developing economies. In most countries, the value of a currency is influenced by a combination of central bank policy, government fiscal decisions, economic stability, international trade flows, and investor confidence. For Iraq, these factors are particularly important because the country is still transitioning from decades of economic disruption toward a more stable and diversified financial system. The Iraqi dinar's current exchange rate framework is largely managed by the Central Bank of Iraq. Like many central banks around the world, the institution monitors inflation, liquidity, foreign currency reserves, and trade balance conditions when considering any adjustments to the official exchange rate. Changes to a national currency are rarely sudden decisions made without extensive preparation. Instead, they usually follow months or even years of policy planning, system readiness checks, and economic evaluation. Because of this structured process, predicting the exact moment of an exchange rate adjustment becomes extremely difficult. Central banks typically release limited information about such decisions in advance because currency speculation can destabilize markets. If a government publicly confirmed an exact date for a major currency shift, it could trigger massive speculative trading, capital flight, or sudden distortions in the domestic economy. This is why analysts often emphasize studying economic signals instead of focusing on specific dates. By analyzing trends in Iraq's financial system, observers can better understand whether the country is moving closer to conditions that might support exchange rate changes in the future. One of the most important indicators in this discussion is Iraq's foreign currency reserves. These reserves, held largely in US dollars and other international assets, act as a protective buffer that allows the country to stabilize its currency. Strong reserves provide the central bank with the ability to support the dinar during market fluctuations and maintain confidence among investors and international partners. Over the past several years, Iraq has worked to strengthen these reserves, largely through oil export revenues. Since oil remains the backbone of Iraq's economy, fluctuations in global energy prices can significantly influence the country's financial stability. When oil prices remain relatively strong, Iraq typically experiences higher government revenues, which can contribute to stronger fiscal balances and improved reserve levels. Another important factor to watch is inflation. Currency adjustments are often connected to efforts by central banks to control inflation or maintain purchasing power within the domestic economy. If inflation rises too quickly, it can weaken the real value of a currency for citizens. Conversely, if inflation remains controlled and stable, policymakers have more flexibility when evaluating long-term currency strategies. For Iraq, maintaining price stability has been a major objective for monetary authorities. The Central Bank of Iraq regularly monitors inflation levels while also managing the supply of dinars in circulation. The balance between liquidity and stability is a critical part of any currency policy decision. Historical examples from other countries show that currency adjustments often occur only after a period of economic reform and financial system strengthening. Governments typically introduce banking reforms, improve financial transparency, modernize payment systems, and increase regulatory oversight before making any significant changes to currency frameworks. In Iraq's case, many reforms have been gradually implemented over the past decade. The country has been working to modernize its banking sector, digitize parts of the financial system, and strengthen compliance with international financial standards. These reforms are important because they help build confidence among international investors and global financial institutions. Another element often discussed by analysts is the role of political stability. Economic policy and political stability are deeply interconnected. When governments experience political gridlock or uncertainty, it can delay major economic decisions. Investors and financial institutions tend to prefer environments where policy direction is clear and consistent. Iraq has experienced periods of political complexity in recent years, including debates over government formation and policy direction. While these developments are part of the normal democratic process, they can influence the timing of major economic initiatives. Stable governance often provides the environment necessary for long-term economic planning and implementation. Beyond domestic conditions, global economic factors also play a role in currency decisions. International trade relationships, foreign investment flows, and global financial conditions can all influence the timing of monetary policy adjustments. For a country like Iraq, which relies heavily on global energy markets, international economic stability is particularly important. Another factor frequently studied by analysts is the development of Iraq's banking and payment infrastructure. Modern financial systems rely heavily on digital banking, international payment networks, and transparent financial reporting. Improvements in these areas can make it easier for countries to integrate into the global financial system. Over the past few years, Iraq has taken steps to modernize parts of its banking infrastructure. Efforts to improve electronic payments, strengthen banking oversight, and enhance anti-money laundering compliance have been part of broader economic reform initiatives. These changes may not directly determine exchange rate policy, but they contribute to the overall financial environment in which such decisions are made. It is also important to remember that currency valuation is closely tied to the broader structure of an economy. Countries with diversified industries, strong exports beyond natural resources, and stable financial systems tend to have more flexibility when managing their exchange rates. For Iraq, diversification beyond oil remains a long-term objective. Economic planners in Iraq have often discussed expanding sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, logistics, and tourism. Developing these industries could reduce reliance on oil revenue and create a more balanced economic foundation. Over time, economic diversification can strengthen a currency by providing multiple sources of national income. For followers of the Iraqi Dinar, understanding these broader economic dynamics is essential. Instead of focusing on rumors or predictions about exact dates, it is far more productive to observe measurable indicators such as economic growth, reserve strength, banking reforms, and fiscal stability. Short-term developments in Iraq's economy may include continued financial reforms, adjustments in fiscal policy, and ongoing efforts to stabilize the domestic market. These steps are part of the gradual process of building a resilient economic system. While they may not immediately lead to exchange rate changes, they contribute to the overall conditions that support long-term monetary stability. Looking at the longer-term perspective, Iraq's economic future will likely depend on continued reforms, responsible fiscal management, and improvements in governance and infrastructure. If these factors continue progressing, they could strengthen investor confidence and enhance the country's financial standing in global markets. It is also worth noting that currency policy decisions are typically made behind closed doors by central bank officials and government policymakers. These decisions involve extensive economic modeling, consultations with financial experts, and careful risk assessments. Because of this complexity, public speculation about exact timing rarely aligns with the actual decision-making process. This brings us back to the central idea that started today's discussion. Nobody outside the official institutions responsible for Iraq's monetary policy can know the exact date or time when a potential exchange rate adjustment might occur. What analysts and observers can do, however, is study economic data, monitor reform progress, and evaluate whether the overall environment appears to be moving toward greater financial stability. In many ways, this analytical approach is healthier for anyone following Iraq's economic developments. It encourages understanding of the country's real economic progress rather than relying on speculation. It also promotes a more responsible perspective on financial news and international currency discussions. As Iraq continues working on economic reforms and financial modernization, observers around the world will keep watching the country's progress. Whether the discussion involves currency policy, investment opportunities, or broader economic development, the key factor will always be long-term stability and sustainable growth. For viewers who follow Iraqi Dinar news regularly, the most valuable strategy is staying informed through credible information sources and paying attention to verifiable economic indicators. Financial markets reward patience, discipline, and informed decision-making far more than speculation. In summary, while the exact timing of any potential change in the Iraqi dinar exchange rate remains unknown, the broader economic story of Iraq continues to evolve. By studying current data, historical patterns, and ongoing reforms, analysts can better understand the trajectory of Iraq's financial system and what it may mean for the country's future. If you want to continue receiving responsible, factual updates about the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's economic developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay connected for future analysis. And as always, please remember that this content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.